Come on, guys. It's obvious what they're doing here. They're breaking the fourth wall. It's a coming-of-age, John Hughes-esque story, and they hired Matthew Broderick as one of the characters. They are clearly referencing Deadpool. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. As always, we're talking about the brand new show or movie on Netflix this morning. Dolomite is my name. That review's on the channel now. But right now, we're going to talk about a little show that dropped yesterday called Daybreak. I need you in the comments down below. Is this a show that you watched and responded to? Did it disappoint? Let's talk about it. So high school outcast Josh is searching for his missing girlfriend in post-apocalyptic Glendale. He's joined by a group of misfits, Angelica and his former bully, Wesley. On the way, they'll face many weird things. In the first few episodes, I kept seeing the name Brad Payton pop up, and I'm like, wait a second, is that director of Rampage and San Andreas? Yes, and it makes a lot of sense. This setting, this post-apocalyptic world ruled by teenagers, that's scary, is something that I think suits his style, and directing-wise, from that perspective, I think he did a good job. Now, this show overall is very interesting from my perspective, because approaching it, I was very excited for the concept. This is something that seemed really cool to me. And when it first started, I mean, it felt like not a pure Ferris Bueller ripoff, but I mean, you got Matthew Broderick, they're breaking the fourth wall, they try to portray this main character in the first few episodes of Josh as the Ferris Bueller of this world, except, hey, the apocalypse happened, and now it's all of these kids kind of ruling things, creating their own groups, survival groups. There are wars raging. There are evil characters decapitating people's heads. I mean, there's a lot of violence in this show. An unexpected hard R rating, or in television terms, TVMA rating, that caught me off guard, but I liked that aspect of it. So all of these things coming together are things that I like, so this should have worked well for me in the first few episodes. Not gonna lie to you guys, I started out not on board for this show. The first two episodes in particular, I just I didn't necessarily respond to. It gets better in the second episode. My big issue was the lead in Josh. I didn't think he was that compelling. I thought he was a character that would have served his purpose as a supporting character, as opposed to the guy that we're kind of following him on his journey. It's his story in the first couple of episodes, and that just didn't necessarily work for me because they're trying to harken back to Ferris Bueller. It's the third time I've said that, but he doesn't have the charm or the charisma that Matthew Broderick had at that age. His line delivery was a bit off, and I didn't buy it. And not to speak against this actor, because I think he did a good job, I just think the script is a little rough at the beginning of this series, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that this show did not know what it was until 3 to 4 episodes in. Once we get into that third episode in particular, and we start shifting this story around a little bit, and we realize that it is actually more of a coming-of-age story than anything else, and it focuses on that, we're kind of scaling back on all of the nonsense and the BS that really upped in the first few episodes. And there is some humor in here that works, but they try to go for it in so many different ways at the beginning of this season. It just wasn't working for me. I found a bit of it cringeworthy, to be honest. Now, all of this to say, don't worry, this review is going to get a bit more positive if you like this show, so don't tune out just yet. I'm just telling you guys how this show managed to take me from where I was at the beginning of it to where I ended up being by, 6, 7 episodes in, because the show gets better. If you dropped off after the first 2 episodes, I'm not going to blame you, honestly, because it was a rough start. I did not anticipate it picking up in the way that it did. I did not anticipate gravitating towards these characters like I ended up gravitating. And something that I said last week in a review that I did, a lot of these shows focused on teenagers, especially a show like this, because, I mean, that's it. All of the adults, they've kind of, they've turned into these ghoulish creatures, so they are ruling the nest, if you will. They're trying to hold the fort until maybe someone comes along and tries to change and shake things up. And normally, my big issue with a show like this is the fact that it tries to elevate their problems and make them feel like they are worse than they actually are. It's like, oh, poor me, I'm not out in the real world yet, but my problems are grand scale. Well, in this show, they are actually dealing with the apocalypse. So it is something that you can kind of gravitate towards emotionally. And while it started out as kind of cheesy in that regard, you do end up caring more because these teenagers are actually dealing things that are pretty hectic and pretty crazy. And this show does get crazy. Now, are they taking advantage of this world without adults? Absolutely. Does it get cheesy in that aspect at times? Sure. It's like, come on, guys. Behave, children. And then you kind of fall into the world that they have created. It's an over-the-top world. It's a world where characters consistently break the fourth wall, and while that was something that bothered me at first because it felt like they were trying to shoehorn in elements that they know people would gravitate towards, but it didn't feel natural, as the show progressed and we start to get a look into other characters, and the main character goes from the character of Josh to the character of Wesley, and then to the character of Angelica, and we learn more about each of them individually. That's when the show started to thrive for me, and then we open up this world a bit more, and it goes from just this post-apocalyptic kind of bland world to something that's a bit more provocative. We get introduced to villainous characters, and when you get the reveal of who they end up being, you're like, whoa, how did I not see that coming? I am sure people will see certain reveals and twists coming, and I did. But there are others that caught me off guard, and I really enjoyed them. And then it gets more into Mad Max territory, where this chaos and fun turns more into a fight for survival. And not that I want it to go away from the fun, but when we get a bit more dramatic, I really enjoyed where the story ended up going. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most well-made show I've ever seen, because there were parts, like I said, that really frustrated me in the beginning. But in the same vein of The Office, I'm not comparing this show to The Office, but how The Office found its own as the show progressed took it a bit longer than it took this show, because we're still on season 1. This show started to find itself in episodes 3 and 4 and 5. And by the time we get to episode 6, I'm sitting here going, okay, it's gotten better. Normally, if a show starts out on such a bad note, and I mean, I wasn't in on the dialogue, the script, nothing was really working for me. It all felt forced. But as we learn more about these characters, the show does get better. And there is an element of fun here that I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the target audience, which I do think is teenagers, it's all about a world where teenagers are ruling the nest, where they are the ones that survive this apocalyptic event that happens. So, of course, that's the audience. I think they're going to love it. If you've never seen Ferris Bueller, I think you're going to like this a lot more than I did. I found too many things that just felt off about the references. The character of Josh does get better as we go. And let's talk about Matthew Broderick really quick, being kind of one of the two adults that they kind of focus on in this show, because we get a lot of flashbacks. They consistently go back to how life was before, what situations were building up the payoffs that we get now, and what the heck was going on at that school, because there are some interesting storylines, especially when we get into Broderick's character's storyline. I'm like, yeah, that is really interesting, and I really liked his character in this show. It's nice to see him back. One of my favorite charismatic young actors of his time. He plays the character of Burke here, the principal, and my goodness, where this character ends up going, y'all are going to be like, oh, okay. And then we have Miss Crumble. Miss Crumble is another interesting one. I started out, I don't know if this is working, and it's wacky and it's insane, but the more you learn, the more you get on board with it. Here's what I'll say. This is an interesting one for me, because I really enjoyed certain elements, and then other elements I'm just like, why are they doing it? Why are they falling into these tropes when they don't need to? Because there are so many things about this show that should work, that should make it one of the most entertaining shows on television, playing on these post-apocalyptic tropes that they fall into at the beginning of the show, and then they start to find their own footing, and the middle of this season is super entertaining. It's super fun. The final 2 or 3 episodes, they lean a bit more heavily into the drama, into the teen romance, and you all know me. If it's cliche-ridden, I'm not going to fall for something like that. I do think the ending is better than the beginning, but the middle portion of this season is something that I think a lot of people are going to love. If you fell off after the first 2 episodes, 1, I don't blame you. 2, maybe if you found something to latch on to, come back, give episodes 3 and 4 a shot. If it's still not for you, then you're not going to like this show at all. If you do find something, The middle portion of the season, like I said, is pretty solid. If you loved the first 2 episodes, you are going to love this season of television. That's one thing that I'll say. Even though I did not necessarily respond to something, I am definitely of a different age group than what this show is actually intended for, so I do think a lot of people are going to respond to this show as a whole because it holds everything that you want in a show like this. And that's what I'll say about this show. Daybreak is wacky, it's crazy, it's unlike anything else you will watch on TV. It definitely found its footing. I am not opposed to seeing more of this world. If it got better during Season 1, that means Season 2 can get better than Season 1. Here's where I'm going to go with my score. I'm actually going to end up going positive. I'm going to go a 62% for a messy show, but a fun show, and one that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, or at least get something out of. If you can get past the cringe at the beginning, then I do think you're going to find something in here. But I definitely want to, I feel like the comment section is going to be all over the place, from I hate it to I love it. But hey, that's the beauty of movies and television, is we can all kind of discuss and talk out our thoughts on what we love and what we respond to when it comes to a show like this. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like I said, Dolomite Is My Name came out this morning. Later on today, there is another Netflix movie we're talking about called Rattlesnake. And if you guys want to see me review Black and Blue, the brand new movie that dropped in theaters, let me know. I'll do that as well tomorrow. You guys are truly the best. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back very soon, and I appreciate your support on Patreon as well. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you later.